When you really think about what hold our modern world together, manufacturing, construction, it's not always the big obvious stuff. Often it's the fasteners. Tiny bits of hardware, easily overlooked, but absolutely critical for safety, for integrity. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the mandatory standards that govern this micro world, specifically the Bureau of Indian Standards, BIS, certification. And our mission, really, is to unpack why India makes these standards mandatory. We'll look at two very different products. On one end, a high-spec industrial self-drilling screw, and on the other, something you'd find on many homes, a simple stainless steel door bolt or all drop. Both need that ISI mark, no exceptions.
Right. And it's fascinating because this mandatory standardization, it's like the hidden bedrock of market confidence. By insisting on the ISI mark for, well, everything from complex machinery parts down to a basic door bolt, India's regulatory system is making a really strong statement. It tells everyone, consumers, industry, that there's just no room for substandard components. This isn't about optional best practices. It's the government saying, this is the minimum quality we accept, especially important in such a dynamic, fast-growing economy.
Okay, let's dig into the technical stuff first.
Yeah.
That industrial workhorse, the self-drilling screw. These aren't your average screws from the local shop, right? These are for high-speed, high-stress assembly lines.
Exactly. Think about it. They drill their own hole and tap their own thread in one go. Absolutely crucial in things like sheet metal work, electrical boxes, machinery, even automotive manufacturing. They save incredible amounts of time.
And the standard governing them sounds pretty intense. IS 14701, Part 3 from 2023, which I gather is based on an international standard, IS 15483 from back in '99, and it's actually being revised again to IS 1471.2025. We're talking specifically about the cross-recessed ones, with the raised countersunk heads.
Yes, and that specific detail matters a lot. That standard is all about ensuring absolute consistency. That raised countersunk head, for instance, it's designed to sit flush but still handle the torque needed without stripping the recess. The standard ensures every screw performs the same way. Dimensional accuracy, the right hardness so it drills without breaking, good corrosion resistance. You have to know, absolutely know, that the screws you get in Mumbai will perform identically to the ones made, say, somewhere in Germany or Vietnam. Interchangeability is vital.
Right. That makes total sense for industrial supply chains. Consistency is everything. But then how does that same regulatory thinking apply right down to something in our homes, like the humble owl drop?
The owl drop. It's actually a perfect contrast. It's that stainless steel sliding bolt, the one you use with a padlock on doors all over India, homes, shops. Functionally simple, maybe, but pretty critical for basic security.
And the standard for that piece of hardware is IS 15834.2020. So what does the standard demand for something seemingly so basic?
Reliability, that's the core of it. The standard specifies the material has to be good quality stainless steel so it won't rust or weaken easily. It also dictates dimensions and design very precisely so they fit standard doors properly. And then there are performance tests. Durability tests.
Like what kind of tests? Do they just try and rip it off the door?
Well, essentially, yes. They test the tensile strength, how much force it takes to pull the bolt assembly apart to make sure it resists forced entry. They also check how smoothly it slides, for long-term use, and definitely its resistance to corrosion. The whole point of IS 15834 is ensuring that this thing you rely on for security is genuinely safe, reliable, and will last.
Okay, and this brings us to the crucial point, the real crux of this discussion. For both of these, the complex screw and the simple bolt, getting that BIS certification, getting the ISI mark stamped on it, it's not a nice to have. It is absolutely mandatory.
That's the key takeaway. If a product falls under these standards, IS 15471 or IS 15834, it must have BIS certification to be legally sold and distributed in India, period. Doesn't matter if it's made down the road in India or imported from halfway across the world. No ISI mark, no sale.
So let's say a German company makes fantastic fasteners. They meet really high automotive standards. Maybe they even have ISO certification. Why the need for a separate mandatory Indian standard, IS? Does that sometimes feel like a barrier to international companies?
That's a really important question, touching on the philosophy behind it. ISO standards are great. They set a global quality baseline. But BIS standards are often tailored. They consider specific Indian conditions, climate, humidity, typical usage patterns, which might be different. So the mandatory aspect acts like a quality filter. It helps prevent substandard imports that might, technically pass a generic check, but wouldn't hold up well long-term in India. It effectively lifts the quality floor for the whole market, which ultimately benefits the end user's safety and ensures product longevity.
That really clarifies the why. It's about applying global quality principles to local realities. Okay, let's pivot to the how.
Yeah.
For any manufacturer, Indian or foreign, wanting to sell these products, the BIS process might seem a bit intimidating. Can we break down that five-step journey, started with just getting the ball rolling?
Sure. Step one is pretty standard administrative stuff, the application submission. You do this online through the BIS portal. But step two, documentation. This is often where the real work begins and where people can stumble. You need to be meticulous.
It's not just ticking boxes on a form, is it? You need solid proof before they even look at your product.
Exactly. You need to upload very specific, detailed information. Your factory layout, where you source your raw materials, especially for something like that stainless steel in the owl drop, you need traceability. Your in-house quality control procedures, detailed product specs that match the IS standard precisely. A common mistake here is maybe the paperwork doesn't perfectly match the actual materials being used. BIS needs a clear, unbroken chain of evidence for quality inputs.
Okay, assuming the paperwork is solid, then comes step three, sample testing. This sounds like the real crucible. The product goes to a BIS-approved lab to prove it meets the standard, and these tests sound pretty rigorous.
Oh, they are. For those self-drilling screws, it's intense, not just measuring dimensions. They do hardness tests, tensile strength tests under load, check the coating thickness for corrosion resistance. They even do torsion tests. Can the screw head and shaft handle the twisting force during drilling and tightening without snapping? A failed screw stops an entire assembly line. These tests aim to prevent that.
Wow. And for the owl drops, how do you rigorously test a simple bolt?
Well, for all drops under IS-1 5834, they do things like simulated long-term use tests. Does the sliding part still work smoothly after thousands of cycles? They'll do accelerated corrosion tests like salt spray, which is vital given India's varied climate, especially coastal humidity. But the big one is often that pull-out strength test. They simulate someone trying to force the door, making sure the bolt itself and its fixing points can take significant stress.
It really shows that ISI mark is earned, not just given. Okay,
Right.
product passes the lab. What's next? Step four is the factory inspection. So BIS officials actually visit the manufacturing plant. That must feel like the final exam for the whole operation.
It absolutely is. And it's a key difference between BIS certification and just, say, getting a single product tested. The inspectors aren't just glancing at the finished items. They're verifying that your entire quality control system in-house is capable of producing compliant products consistently, day in, day out.
What specifically are they looking for? What are the potential failure points during that inspection?
They look closely at infrastructure and process. Are your measuring tools calibrated? Your micrometers, gauges, testing machines, are the calibration records up to date? How do you handle raw materials versus finished goods? Is there clear separation, especially for any stock that might be non-compliant? And crucially, they audit your in-process checks. They want documented proof, and to see it happening that you're doing the required checks, maybe coating thickness, hardness tests during production, not just on the final batch sent to the lab. It's all about consistency and traceability.
So it shifts the focus from just making one perfect sample to proving you have a reliable system for quality. And only after passing that inspection comes step five, the grant of license. That's when you get the green light to use the ISI mark.
That's right. And it's important to remember that license isn't a lifetime pass. It involves ongoing surveillance, renewals, ensuring that standards are maintained. But if a manufacturer has their ducks in a row, the whole process, testing, inspection, it can often be completed within, a reasonable time frame, maybe a few weeks or months, depending on specifics.
Okay, reasonable time frame perhaps, but I'm thinking about a foreign manufacturer. Step three, sample testing in an Indian lab. And step four, facilitating a factory inspection maybe thousands of miles away. That sounds like a potential logistical headache. Imagine a screw maker in, say, Southeast Asia trying to manage all that.
You've hit on a critical point. That's precisely where the ecosystem of compliance support services becomes so important. For international exporters, the complexity can be significant. Different time zones, potential language issues, very specific rules about how samples must be sent, how the inspection visit is arranged.
So when we talk about streamlining compliance, what does that help actually involve? It sounds like more than just filling out forms.
Oh, much more. You essentially need expert guides. These services manage the complex coordination. They help ensure that huge documentation package is formatted exactly how BIS needs it, which might be different from what they're used to for ISO, for example. They liaise with BIS officials and the approved labs, making sure samples are collected correctly, sealed properly, shipped without issues. Simple procedural errors here can cause major delays or rejections.
And what about that factory inspection? What kind of support is offered when the BIS officers are actually on site?
It's often about preparation. Consultants might help the factory do internal pre-audits, identifying weak spots before the official inspection, maybe spotting uncalibrated tools or gaps in quality records. During the inspection itself, they can act as a bridge, facilitating communication between the inspection team and the factory staff, especially if there are language barriers. It helps make the whole process smoother, faster, minimizing misunderstandings or delays, which saves time and money for everyone involved, whether they're based in India or exporting from abroad.
So we started this looking at industrial needs and everyday home security. And what's emerged is that this BIS mandate, covering both complex fasteners and simple bolts, isn't just red tape. It's about building a baseline of enforced trust in the market.
Absolutely. And if you step back and look at the bigger picture, the global trade landscape, it does raise an interesting question. When a major economy like India mandates its own specific standards, rather than just adopting international ones wholesale for such a wide range of components,
Hmm.
what does that signal? It signals a very strong commitment to controlling quality within its borders, ensuring safety, and maybe protecting consumers and domestic industries from unreliable, low-quality goods flooding the market.
It really underscores that credibility, that trust, is built from the ground up, right from the smallest components. These standards, IS 18471, IS 15834, they exist to make sure that whether you're assembling critical machinery or just locking your front door, the hardware involved is tested, reliable, and built to last. That ISI mark isn't just decoration, it's a legally mandated guarantee. And maybe here's something for you, the listener, to think about. If these mandatory BIS standards are successfully raising the quality baseline for hardware in India, what other categories of products, perhaps more complex materials or specialized components, might we see added to this mandatory list in the coming years? It feels like the scope for enforced quality control could keep expanding.